Cleaning, lady falls in love and gets pregnant by a stranger on a cruise ship and is shocked when she discovers he was the ship's owner. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Mia had always believed that life's greatest miracles arrived when you least expected them. Growing up in a small, tight-knit neighborhood, she learned early on that money didn't flow easily and opportunities were rare treasures. From the window of her cramped apartment, she could see the distant lights of the harbor, an entire world shimmering with possibilities. Whenever a fancy cruise ship docked, Mia would sneak a look at the passengers stepping onto land, their faces glowing with the joy of adventure. She wondered what it would feel like to be so carefree, to wander the decks of a vessel that promised endless horizons. But at 19, Mia's only future seemed to be the stained uniform of a local cleaning company and the never-ending whisper of her own daydreams. She came from a family of modest means. Her mother was a seamstress, her father, a mechanic who worked nights. They had taught her the value of honest labor and the power of humility. Despite her best efforts, Mia found herself stuck in a loop of washing, scrubbing, and dusting as a hotel cleaner. Her slender hands would ache at the end of a day, yet her spirit remained hopeful, a tiny flame that refused to go out. She would hum her favorite songs while she mopped floors, imagining she was drifting across a grand ballroom. If only, she would think, if only I could glimpse a life beyond these cracked walls and tired corridors. Her chance came in the most unexpected manner. One sticky summer afternoon, Mia's supervisor at the cleaning agency called her into the office. A large woman with a stern expression, Miss Porter rarely smiled, and that day was no exception. Yet her tone was polite, almost excited. "Mia, you've been selected for a special contract. The Paradise Voyager is docking here tomorrow, short-staffed and in desperate need of housekeeping. You'll board in the morning, spend the week cleaning cabins, then return with them on the next route." Mia stood there, her heart thumping so hard she wondered if Ms. Porter could hear it. The Paradise Voyager. The name alone evoked images of luxurious dining halls, sweeping spiral staircases, and dazzling ocean views. Of course, she'd be there to work. Of course, she'd have to wake up before dawn, endure long hours tidying up the lavish messes of guests who might not even notice her. But she would be at sea. She would breathe in the salted air and watch the shoreline fade into the distance. In her modest world, this was nothing short of an invitation to a grand adventure. That same night, Mia could barely sleep. She ironed her only decent set of uniforms and laid them out gently. Her mother tried to calm her nerves with sweet tea, telling her that every journey begins with a single step, and oh, how Mia savored those words. She thought about the ocean's endless horizon and wondered if, somewhere in its vastness, her destiny was waiting. Something told her she was on the brink of change, a shift in her life that would redefine everything she knew. Early the next morning, carrying a small suitcase and her wide-eyed hopes, Mia reported to the harbor. The Paradise Voyager stood tall and majestic, its pristine hull reflecting the sunrise. A hush fell over her as she climbed the boarding ramp among a handful of workers who, like her, had been contracted for short-term housekeeping. Even from the staff entrance, she could see touches of splendor. A chandelier glimmering in the hallway, polished floors you could practically see your reflection in, and plush carpeting that sank beneath each footstep. The ship's housekeeping manager gave the team a quick orientation. They were expected to keep to themselves, remain polite, and, above all, stay efficient. Mia listened, her heart fluttering. She was assigned to service an entire hallway of guest suites on one of the lower decks, a place where people traveling in smaller cabins often stayed. It wasn't glamorous, but it was more than she ever expected. The manager's words blurred in her ears as she tried not to let her awe show on her face. Windows framed a seemingly endless stretch of water. The gentle sway of the ship made her feel like she was already part of a secret dance with the sea. On her first afternoon break, the The other cleaners were too tired to mingle. Mia found herself on the open-air promenade, a portion of the deck less crowded with tourists at that hour. Leaning against the rail, she let the breeze comb through her hair. The ocean spread out in every direction, an infinite blanket of rippling blue. She inhaled deeply, letting the salty air fill her lungs. For a moment she closed her eyes and thought, "I'm out here, and I'm free." Even if just for a week, it was freedom she had never known. That was when she sensed someone watching. Opening her eyes, she saw a man standing a few paces away, dressed in casual slacks and a linen shirt. He appeared to be in his late 20s, perhaps, exuding a self-assured poise. His gaze fell upon her with curiosity rather than judgment. Mia felt her cheeks warm, and she quickly turned back toward the water, reminding herself, "Guests are off limits. You're here to work, not to chat." Moments later, the man approached. Instead of arrogance, he spoke with a quiet politeness. "First time on a cruise?" he asked. Mia nodded shyly. Something about his voice was soothing, like the hush of the waves. He was tall, with a touch of stubble that suggested he was comfortable in his own skin. She swallowed hard, reminding herself of her uniform, the badge that labeled her as a cleaning staff member. "Yes," she managed to answer. I'm just taking a short break. It's so beautiful out here." "I agree," he said. "The ocean is unending, isn't it?" He paused, then gave a gentle, understanding smile. "Must be nice to see new horizons, even if you're busy working." Mia nodded again, not trusting herself to speak more. She expected him to vanish like any other wealthy guest, bored by a brief conversation with a staff member. Yet he lingered, leaning on the rail next to her. There was no trace of condescension in his manner. Quite the opposite, in fact. After a few moments of quiet, the man reached out to shake her hand. "My name's Daniel," he said simply. "Yours?" She hesitated. Strict rules from the housekeeping manager echoed in her mind. "Keep your head down, avoid personal discussions with the guests, and never break the professional code." But something about Daniel's kind demeanor made her want to trust him. "Mia," she replied softly. A quick handshake sealed their fleeting connection, and then Daniel excused himself politely to attend some scheduled activity. Mia found her heart beating unsteadily. How odd. She was just a cleaner. He was presumably a paying passenger. This was the kind of quick conversation that might never repeat, a swirl in the wind. "Don't get carried away, Mia," she warned herself. But that night, as she folded plush towels in the linen closet, she couldn't help remembering his eyes, warm, open, and just a little bit curious. She wondered where on the ship he was, whether he was dancing in the onboard club or feasting in the lavish dining hall. Perhaps it was just her imagination romanticizing a polite exchange. Maybe she was simply projecting her longing for a friend in this ocean-bound palace where she felt so invisible. In the following days, her schedule grew hectic. Mornings began at 5, with Mia assigned to vacuum long corridors and sanitize every surface. The housekeeping manager had a sharp eye. Any smudge missed on the golden railings resulted in a stern lecture. Mia took her job seriously, determined to do well. Still, late at night, she would sneak a few minutes to stand on a quiet deck and watch the stars. The hush of the ocean served as her lullaby, a comforting reminder of how immense the world was beyond her small life. Occasionally, she bumped into Daniel, once near an elevator, another time at the ship's cafe where she ran in to grab a quick cup of water. Each encounter was friendly but fleeting. His presence was like a warm breeze, a reminder that maybe not everyone on this cruise saw her as a nameless uniform. Then, on the fourth evening, something surprising happened. Mia had just finished tidying a vacant cabin. Checking her list, she realized there was an error. She needed to service a suite higher up, on a deck reserved for more luxurious accommodations. The corridor there was hushed, as if it belonged to a different world entirely. She scanned the plaque numbers. One door was ajar. Thinking she might have made a mistake, She stepped forward timidly to see if any occupant was inside. That's when she heard a voice, a panicked voice. "Hello?" Mia called gently, stepping in. The suite was magnificent, its large window offering a moonlit ocean panorama. A man stood near the minibar, rummaging through glasses and bottled water. When he turned around, Mia's heart froze momentarily. It was Daniel. He looked disheveled, perspiration beading on his forehead. His eyes lit up with recognition. "Mia," he paused, taking a quick breath. "Could you help me? My friend's feeling really sick. I don't know what happened. She fainted in the bedroom." Without hesitation, Mia rushed in and found a woman lying pale on the plush bed. Pulse racing, Mia recalled the emergency procedures the housekeeping staff had been trained for. She checked the woman's breathing and her pulse, then signaled Daniel to call the ship's medical team. Within minutes, paramedics arrived, and Mia stepped aside, her heart pounding. Daniel followed them out, relief all over his face as they carried the woman away for further examination. Before Mia could slip back to her duties, he touched her arm gently, gratitude shining in his eyes. "You were a big help. Thank you." For a moment, the world stopped around them. The swirl of anxious paramedics, the hush of the corridor, the silent hum of the ship's engine. It all faded. She caught her breath, noticing the sincerity in his gaze. "I'm glad I was here," she managed to say. "I hope she's okay." "She will be," he promised, running a hand through his hair. "Thank you, Mia." She looked away, unsure of what else to say. She was just the cleaning girl who happened to be at the right place, at the right time. Yet the moment felt oddly intimate, a connection sparked by crisis, forging a bond deeper than polite chatter on the deck. Little did Mia know, this was only the beginning of a whirlwind that would soon bring life-altering news. An unplanned pregnancy, and a secret identity so massive it would shake her to the core. Mia rarely spoke about herself, but that evening she found the need to breathe fresh air was more urgent than ever. After the medics left with Daniel's friend, she felt her nerves jitter in the stateroom's ornate hallway. Under ordinary circumstances, she would have bowed out, returned to her cleaning cart, and resumed her quiet routine. But tonight felt different. She had just witnessed the vulnerable side of someone who, until then, had seemed poised and confident. Seeking respite from the buzz of the corridor, Mia slipped out toward a small side deck, one that wasn't swarming with tourists at such an hour. She pushed open the heavy door leading outside. Immediately, the wind tousled her hair, and the salty air seemed to cradle her turbulent emotions. Standing at the railing, Mia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Just as she closed her eyes to center herself, the door behind her clicked open. She sensed a presence stepping out. She turned and saw Daniel, still looking shaken but with relief written across his face. "I needed some air," he said, offering her a weak smile. "Thank you again for your help in there." Mia nodded, still unsure what to say. "Is your friend going to be okay?" He exhaled. "The medic thinks it was dehydration and some anxiety. She'll recover. They're keeping her in the infirmary just in case." They lapsed into silence for a moment, the hush of the ocean smoothing out the tension. As the ship's lights glimmered on the water, Daniel glanced sideways at Mia, a new depth to his gaze. "I'm sorry if this is too forward, but I'd really like to get to know you better," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I mean, you're always working, but every time we've crossed paths, you've shown so much kindness." Mia's cheeks grew warm. The rule book in her mind rang alarms. Staff shouldn't fraternize with passengers. You're here to do your job. But standing there with the hush of waves and the memory of the night's scare fresh in both their minds, she found it difficult to keep up the usual walls. "I'm just doing my job," she murmured. "Really, anyone else would have done the same." "Maybe." Daniel's eyes flickered, a thoughtful expression. "But I'm grateful it was you. Look, I'm sure you have a million reasons to say no, but would you ever have a moment off duty for a cup of tea? just to talk. Nothing more. A cup of tea. Mia felt her heart flutter at the thought of being seen, truly seen, by someone. And yet she knew the safe response would be to say no. Thank him politely and leave. That was what the housekeeping manager would expect. That was what her circumstances dictated. However, her quiet longing for companionship, combined with the lingering warmth of Daniel's gratitude, pushed her to consider a small leap of faith. I'm not sure, she replied softly. My schedule is really packed. I understand, he said quickly, sensing her hesitance. I'm here for a few more days. If you ever manage a spare minute, I'll be at the lounge near the pool deck around 10 each night just to read or unwind. No pressure. If you show up, I'll be thrilled. If not, well, I'll respect that. Those words, so genuinely offered, echoed in Mia's ears long after Daniel slipped back inside. She remained out on the deck, gazing at the stars. The ocean's expanse reminded her of possibility, but also of danger, the unknown, the uncertain. Why was her heart racing at the mere suggestion of a casual chat? Don't be foolish, she told herself. He's a guest. You can't risk your job for a fleeting conversation. Yet the next few nights, as she finished her shift, Mia caught herself thinking about that lounge on the pool deck. Each time, she resisted. Fear of crossing the invisible boundary between staff and passenger weighed her down like an anchor. But as the ship's final days at sea approached, Mia felt an inexplicable nudge urging her to take that risk, even if just once, to share a moment of normalcy with someone who, despite the social chasm between them, seemed to treat her like an equal. On the final evening before the voyage ended, she finished wiping down the last row of cabin fixtures around 9:30. The housekeeping manager had dismissed the staff early, announcing that passengers would disembark first thing in the morning. Normally, Mia would have gone to her bunk in the staff quarters and collapsed, exhausted. Instead, she found herself lingering by a mirror, smoothing her hair. Her pulse pounded with each step as she climbed the stairs to the pool deck. The lounge area sat partly indoors, partly out, and the glow of dim lanterns cast long reflections on the water's surface. When she stepped inside, she caught sight of Daniel immediately. He was seated at a corner table with a mug in front of him, flipping through a small paperback. Her heart hammered. What if he was just being polite, and this was all a misunderstanding? As though he felt her presence, Daniel lifted his gaze. Surprise flitted across his features, followed by a warm, welcoming smile. He stood, pulling out a seat for her. Mia drifted forward, her nerves tangled with curiosity. I'm so glad you came, Daniel said quietly. I wasn't sure if... Yeah, she stammered, taking the seat. I'm not sure either. A silence, then laughter, soft and shy. It felt surreal, this moment of genuine conversation in a place so saturated with wealth and formality. A waiter appeared, and Daniel gestured gently, as if asking for permission on Mia's behalf. She nodded, and a hot cup of chamomile tea was soon placed in front of her. She cradled it in her hands, feeling both the warmth of the porcelain and a tremor of nervous excitement. They talked in hushed voices, mindful of the few guests lingering around. At first, the conversation danced around everyday matters, the ocean's beauty, Daniel's typical travels for business, and Mia's first experience on a cruise. She offered polite tidbits, still guarded, but there was a kindness in Daniel's questions, like he truly wanted to hear her answers, not just fill the air. Eventually, the chatter grew more personal. Daniel revealed that he traveled often, though never quite found a place he wanted to stay for long. Mia spoke of her parents, her dreams of seeing more of the world. For reasons she couldn't explain, words spilled out of her as though she'd been holding them back for years. She told him about nights spent imagining a better life, about how cleaning floors was her only means to help her family make ends meet. She felt neither pity from Daniel nor judgment, only empathy. It felt as if, for a fleeting hour, they were just two people, free from the constraints of their roles. A gentle hush settled over them, when they realized the lounge was nearly empty. It was late, and the ship's hum had taken on that deep, resonant note of midnight crossing. Outside, the waters were calm, the moon reflecting on the gentle waves. Mia's half-finished cup of tea had gone lukewarm, and she knew that soon she'd have to slip back to her staff cabin and pack for tomorrow's disembarkation. Daniel picked up on her unspoken sadness. "I'll be sorry to see you go," he murmured, his eyes holding hers. "I wish we could have had more time, but I understand. Your life is on shore and, well, mine is somewhat scattered." She swallowed. Something about the phrase "more time" made her chest tighten. "Thank you for tonight," she finally said. "It was nice to talk, to feel normal." "You deserve normal," Daniel said, gently placing his hand over hers. "And so much more." His words warmed her more than the tea ever could. She glanced at their hands, her worn nails and skin roughened by cleaning products, his neatly trimmed nails and subtle tan. The differences were undeniable, yet the sense of connection felt real. This can't last, she told herself. Tomorrow she'd be back in her cramped apartment with only the memory of these precious moments at sea. They parted with a quiet promise, something vague about meeting again if fate allowed. Mia left the lounge with a swirl of mixed emotions. She reminded herself that cruises were ephemeral. Guests left, staff changed contracts, and everyone returned to their worlds as if the shipboard life had been a dream. Little did she know that dream would follow her ashore. In the weeks to come, Mia would discover she was pregnant, and the father, unknown to her at the time, was not merely a gentle soul wandering the decks. He was the invisible owner of the Paradise Voyager itself, a revelation that would crash into her reality and change every anchor point she'd ever known. Back in her cramped apartment, Mia tried to fall back into her old routines. She hadn't told anyone about her brief, quietly magical moments on the cruise. It all felt too fragile and unreal, like a dream she feared would crumble under the weight of real life. There were bills to pay, clothes to wash, meals to cook. Her parents noticed a softness in her eyes, a change that Mia couldn't quite hide, but neither pressed her for details. They assumed she was simply exhausted from the long hours at the cleaning agency. Yet at night, when the world slowed and the streets quieted, Mia's thoughts drifted to Daniel. She wondered what corner of the world he might be in, whether he was still traveling, or if he even remembered the housekeeper he had shared a quiet cup of tea with. Logic told her it was best to let those memories go. She was just one of many people he must have encountered on a luxury cruise line, and if she allowed herself to fantasize, well, she risked further heartbreak. So Mia tried to bury it. She told herself that the glimpse of wonder she'd experienced at sea was enough. It had to be enough. 3 weeks after she returned, her mother mentioned that Mia looked pale, drawn. She brushed off the concerns as fatigue. Another week passed, and Mia couldn't ignore the nagging sense that her body was shifting in ways she didn't fully understand. Her appetite fluctuated wildly, and she felt waves of nausea in the early morning. Deep down, she suspected what these symptoms might mean, but she resisted acknowledging them. The mere possibility that she could be pregnant by a man she barely knew, someone far beyond her social reach, terrified her more than any tough day of labor ever had. At first, she denied it completely. She woke up feeling sick, gulped water, forced down some bread, and moved on with her day. But the suspicion nestled in her mind, growing stronger each time she felt lightheaded or had to secretly duck into the restroom to settle her churning stomach. Eventually, in a moment of restless courage, she walked into a small pharmacy near the bus station and bought a pregnancy test. Her hands shook as she exchanged the few crumpled bills she had. The cashier gave her a sympathetic glance, but Mia hurried off without meeting his gaze, stuffing the test into her purse. That night, after her parents had gone to bed, Mia locked herself in the tiny bathroom. Its peeling wallpaper and flickering light bulbs seemed to cast an even gloomier shadow over her racing thoughts. With trembling fingers, she followed the instructions and waited the required minutes, heart hammering. "Please let it be negative," she begged silently. "I can't do this alone." But the test was undeniably positive. Her legs felt weak, and she sank onto the closed toilet seat, her eyes misting. 1,000 questions swirled in her head. Could the test be wrong? And if it wasn't, then what? She had practically no savings, no stable career, and no contact information for Daniel. The father of her child was out there, living a life she knew almost nothing about, other than that he was kind and gentle for a short span of time. Would he even believe her if she somehow found him? Maybe he's already moved on, she thought, fear and heartbreak clashing in her chest. Mia cried in silence that night, a towel pressed to her mouth to muffle the sound. She felt unmoored, like she was drifting alone in a vast ocean without a life vest. When she finally emerged from the bathroom, she shoved the test deep into the trash, wrapping it in layers of tissue so that no one would see. In the morning, she would have to figure out how to survive. She would have to be strong. But all she could do for now was stare at the dark ceiling above her bed, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She returned to work the next day, forcing a neutral expression. The cleaning agency had assigned her to various offices downtown, rotating from building to building. It was less glamorous than the cruise contract, and the pay was meager, but she had no other options. As she scrubbed the floors and emptied trash bins, her body felt heavier with each step. The knowledge of her pregnancy made her cautious. Like every chemical, every movement might pose a risk to the life growing inside her. Her supervisor, Ms. Porter, eventually noticed something off about Mia's energy. "You're slower than usual," she barked. "If something's wrong, get it sorted out, because I need efficiency here." Mia bit her lip, murmured a quick apology, and tried to pick up the pace. She couldn't risk losing her job, but her fatigue was undeniable, and the constant wave of nausea made tasks feel monumental. That day she headed home on the bus, shoulders slumped in defeat. She had to do something. She couldn't hide her condition forever. When she finally told her mother, it happened less by choice than by necessity. One morning, Mia nearly fainted in the kitchen while helping prep her father's lunch. The color drained from her face, and she clutched the countertop to stay upright. Alarmed, her mother pressed her for answers. At first, Mia tried to dodge the topic, but the tears came flooding again. It was impossible to keep the truth hidden any longer. I'm pregnant, Mama," she whispered, lowering her eyes. Time seemed to slow as her mother stared in shock. The older woman's voice trembled with concern when she finally spoke. "How? Is it that young man you mentioned from the cruise?" "Oh, Mia." Humiliation and fear merged in Mia's chest. She sank into a chair, sobbing quietly as she confessed everything, that she'd met someone who wasn't just a passing fling, but someone she had genuinely connected with, if only for a short time. She explained how they'd parted with little more than a gentle promise, and how she had no way of contacting him. Her mother said little at first, simply pulling Mia into a trembling hug. Her father, upon hearing the news, wore a troubled frown, unsure whether to scold or comfort. The complexities of shame and protectiveness warred on his features, but ultimately seeing Mia's tear-streaked face and fragile demeanor softened him. They might have meager resources, but they were a family. Still, the question remained, what now? For several nights, Mia was plagued by restlessness. She searched online for a Daniel associated with the Paradise Voyager, only to find that the ship's management, owners, and operators had little public information that matched the Daniel she knew. She recalled no surname from their conversation, no phone number. She only knew he traveled often and that the timing of their single, intimate evening was the reason for her pregnancy. She toyed with the idea that maybe he was just a well-off traveler, but as she probed deeper, she found scattered hints that someone named Daniel could be connected to the ship more directly. Yet there was nothing conclusive, and her skill with internet searches was limited. Part of her even questioned if she wanted to find him. Was it better to leave him out of the situation entirely? One particular afternoon, Mia's best friend from the neighborhood, Karina, came over with some groceries to help. Karina was one of the few confidants Mia had ever trusted. Over a small kitchen table, they pored over Mia's fragmented recollections of Daniel. She described his gentle manners, the watch he wore that looked expensive, the subtle but regal posture in the way he walked. Most tellingly, she recalled something about how staff on the ship addressed him with unusual respect, different from a regular passenger, as if they recognized him. "Mia," Karina said firmly, "I know this is complicated, but you can't keep this all to yourself. If he's actually the father, he has a right to know. And you have a right to help if he can provide it. Raising a baby isn't easy, especially with your job." Mia nodded, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. She felt trapped between two harsh realities, living with the financial and emotional burden alone, or somehow tracking down a man whose life seemed worlds away. The word charity case flickered across her mind. She couldn't bear the idea of being pitied or accused of scheming for money, and yet, as her belly would inevitably begin to grow, how could she hide from the consequences? Weeks slipped by. Mia tried to focus on her health. Her mother prepared nourishing soups, and Karina accompanied her to a free clinic for a prenatal checkup. Hearing the soft gallop of the baby's heartbeat for the first time made Mia cry anew. This was real. She was carrying a tiny life, one that deserved every chance. Standing outside the clinic, she made a silent vow. She would do her best, no matter how bleak it looked. But fate had other plans. One morning, a simple letter arrived at Mia's address, bearing no return name, just a crisp envelope with her name handwritten on the front. Inside was a short note. "We understand you used to work on the Paradise Voyager. Your assistance is required for a follow-up regarding housekeeping matters. Please contact us at the enclosed number." The letterhead read, "Aegean Maritime Holdings." Mia stared at it, heart pounding. Aegean Maritime Holdings was a shadowy name rumored to be associated with the ownership of multiple luxury cruise lines, including the Paradise Voyager. Had someone discovered her attempts to search for Daniel? Or was this a simple post-employment inquiry? Karina and Mia studied the letter, suspecting that it was anything but routine. Could it be related to Daniel? Or was she in trouble for fraternizing with a passenger? Mia felt both fear and hope swirling in her chest. She glanced down at her belly. 2 months along, maybe more. If there was any path to clarity, it might be following up on this mysterious letter. Steeling herself, she picked up her phone and prepared to dial, not knowing that on the other end awaited a conversation that would rattle her world. In that moment, Mia had no idea how close she was to uncovering the truth about Daniel. A truth that would make every suspicion, every rumor feel like a mere whisper next to the real story. That the father of her child was no ordinary passenger but the very owner of the Paradise Voyager. Mia's phone felt like a heavy weight in her hand as she dialed the number from the mysterious letter. Her heart thudded so loudly she feared the person on the other end would hear. Each ring deepened her anxiety, until, at last, a calm but clipped voice answered. The woman introduced herself as Mrs. Gillespie, an administrative liaison for Aegean Maritime Holdings. Mia swallowed, forcing her own words out with a politeness that belied her trembling nerves. Hello, this is Mia. I received a letter stating that you needed my assistance regarding my previous contract on the Paradise Voyager." A short pause crackled over the line. Mia could almost picture Mrs. Gillespie scanning through files. "Yes, Ms. Mia," the woman replied, using only her first name but sounding strangely formal. "We understand you worked briefly as a contracted housekeeper on the cruise. We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss an internal inquiry regarding staff experiences. Can you come in next week? We'll arrange the transportation and cover any expenses." Surprise flooded Mia's features. Cover expenses? Aegean Maritime Holdings was not known for benevolent gestures. This had to be more than a trivial housekeeping questionnaire. But how? Why me, specifically? She pushed aside her chaotic thoughts. Sure, she said uncertainly. Next week is possible. But may I ask what this is about? Certainly, Mrs. Gillespie said, though her tone remained guarded. We simply need to clarify certain aspects of passenger-staff interactions. You'll receive a formal appointment notice, along with your travel details. Please confirm your availability. Mia managed to mutter a yes and ended the call, heart pounding. What if they'd discovered she had mingled with a guest? Could she be facing legal trouble, or a demand for silence? A swirl of dread and guarded hope chased each other in her mind. Perhaps, in a best-case scenario, this was a route to Daniel. In a worst-case scenario, it could upend what little stability she had. Karina, standing by with anxious curiosity, gently pried the phone from Mia's tense grip. Well, you look like you've just seen a ghost. What did they say? Mia exhaled shakily and relayed the gist of the conversation. Karina's eyes widened. They're paying for your travel? That's not normal. They must really want to see you. I know, Mia breathed. I just don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Within a day, an official email landed in Mia's inbox, confirming a meeting at Aegean Maritime Holdings' local branch office, an imposing glass-walled building perched near the city's upscale harbor district. Sure enough, the company attached digital travel vouchers for Mia to take a taxi. They even offered a modest stipend for incidentals. Everything about it felt eerily well-funded, like an invisible hand ensuring she had no reason to refuse. Her parents, though wary, urged her to go. At least find out what they want, her father said quietly, sipping tea at their cramped kitchen table. His eyes drifted to Mia's still flat abdomen, shadowed by the knowledge that soon it would be impossible to hide. Mia nodded. She had to muster her courage. If there was even a chance this had to do with Daniel, she owed it to her unborn child to pursue the truth. On the day of the meeting, Mia dressed carefully in her neatest outfit, a simple blouse and skirt that didn't strain her limited budget. Her mother clasped her hands, saying a few words of encouragement. Climbing into the waiting taxi, Mia felt a rush of unfamiliar luxury. A professional driver, a direct route across the city's busy streets. Once they arrived, the building loomed tall, its mirrored facade reflecting the bustle of the harbor. She stepped into the lobby, her stomach in knots. From the moment Mia stated her name at the reception desk, an almost unsettling courtesy enveloped her. The receptionist greeted her with a respectful nod and immediately offered water or coffee. Another assistant arrived to escort her to a private conference room on a higher floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic view of the sea, an echo of the ocean vistas she remembered from the cruise. Nervousness prickled across her skin. She was expecting a group of stern attorneys, perhaps. Instead, she found only one person waiting, Mrs. Gillespie, a composed woman in her 50s with silver hair pinned into a neat twist. She wore a tasteful suit that hinted at authority without showiness. Gesturing to a plush chair, Mrs. Gillespie offered a faint smile. "Mia, welcome. Please, have a seat." Her tone was calm, but her gaze carried an unmistakable sharpness, as though she was studying every nuance of Mia's posture. Mia settled into the seat, trying not to let her tension show. The assistant set a pitcher of water on the table and departed discreetly, leaving them alone. "Thank you for coming," Mrs. Gillespie said, folding her hands. "I'm sure you're wondering why we requested your presence." "Yes," Mia admitted. I don't really know what this is about." Nodding, Mrs. Gillespie opened a slim folder on the table. "You were contracted as temporary housekeeping staff on the Paradise Voyager 3 months ago, correct?" "That's right," Mia replied, her voice faltering. "We have reason to believe you had some contact with a particular individual aboard that vessel." The older woman's eyes slid up from the folder. Mia felt goosebumps rise on her arms. This is it, she thought. They do know something about me and Daniel. She braced herself for an accusation, fraternizing with a guest, violating staff codes, maybe even a threat to hush her. But Mrs. Gillespie surprised her by adding delicately, "For now, we'll keep names confidential. However, we'd like to ask you a few questions about your interactions on that cruise. This is strictly off the record, for internal knowledge only." Mia's throat tightened. She mustered her courage. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I understand. Is this about me speaking with one of the passengers?" "Precisely. And it's crucial for us to know. How well did you become acquainted with him? Did you continue contact after the cruise ended?" Mrs. Gillespie's voice remained polite, but her gaze was unwavering. Adrenaline surged through Mia's veins. Her mind flashed back to the fleeting evenings she'd spent with Daniel. The conversation, the tea, the quiet intimacy. Did Aegean Maritime suspect she was pregnant with his child? Or were they just sniffing around because he was important in some way? She parted her lips to speak, but for a moment, no words came. Mrs. Gillespie waited patiently, an air of calm pressing upon the silence. Mia decided to speak carefully. Telling the complete truth might be her best option, yet she feared revealing her pregnancy. "I did speak to a gentleman on board," she began, voice shaky. "A few times. We had tea once, and we talked. I didn't even know his full name. He seemed very kind. That's all?" Mrs. Gillespie nodded, her expression revealing nothing. Did he confide anything about himself, his position, his background? Mia hesitated, recalling details she had gleaned. How staff members recognized Daniel with subtle deference. How he seemed to have knowledge about the ship's inner workings beyond a normal passenger. But she never received a direct explanation from him. "Not exactly," she confessed. "He mentioned traveling for business. He was, well, polite. But no, he never directly said who he was." A tiny line of satisfaction flickered over Mrs. Gillespie's face, as though she'd confirmed a suspicion. "I see. Mia, if you'll indulge a candid question. After you returned home, did you attempt to contact him?" Heat rose in Mia's cheeks. "I might have searched online," she admitted, voice low. "But I had nothing to go on, no last name, no phone number. And so you had no success, correct?" Mrs. Gillespie pressed. Mia shook her head. At that, Mrs. Gillespie let out a measured exhale, carefully setting the folder aside. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Mia, I'm going to share something with you. I ask that you keep this conversation strictly confidential, for your own sake as well as the company's. The man you encountered is integral to Aegean Maritime Holdings. He's not an ordinary passenger. He is, in fact, one of our principal owners." A spark of shock coursed through Mia, though a tiny voice in her mind whispered that she'd long suspected something of this magnitude. Hearing it confirmed left her breathless. Daniel. An owner. No wonder the staff had shown him extra courtesy. No wonder he carried himself with such understated assurance. Yet the revelation also stoked her fear. If he's so important, then I'm truly no one. Why am I here then? As if reading her thoughts, Mrs. Gillespie continued calmly. Normally, the personal affairs of our principal owners are private, and the company would not involve itself. However, certain information came to our attention, information suggesting that the two of you might have formed a close connection. She paused, letting the implication hang. We want to ensure that everything is handled amicably. Mia's ears rang. A hush pressed in on her. How could you possibly know about us? She asked weakly. Mrs. Gillespie pursed her lips. Security cameras monitor certain areas for the safety of staff and passengers. Additionally, Mr. Daniel sometimes confides in staff he trusts. Some employees surmised he had taken an interest in a housekeeper. It was enough for us to keep track of possible complications. Complications? Mia echoed bitterly. She thought of the child in her womb, already stirring her world into upheaval. Mrs. Gillespie offered a sympathetic tilt of the head. "I'm not here to judge, Mia. Nor is it my place, but the company must protect its interests, and that often includes ensuring no misunderstandings arise that could tarnish reputations, yours or Mr. Daniels." Trembling, Mia folded her hands in her lap. Her mind spun. Did they suspect she was pregnant? Would they try to buy her silence? The older woman's next words answered that question in part. "We need to ask you, is there anything we should know about your current condition or future intentions regarding Mr. Daniel?" The question hit like a gavel in a silent courtroom. Mia stared at Mrs. Gillespie, fear and anger blossoming. This was her life, her baby, yet it was being dissected like a potential scandal. The part of her that wanted to protect her child at all costs flared. She inhaled, summoning courage. I'm pregnant," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes glistened as she forced herself to lift her head, meeting Mrs. Gillespie's gaze. "It's his child. That's the truth." The older woman's expression didn't flicker much, but she did clasp her hands a bit tighter. A slow exhale escaped her as though this was exactly what she'd anticipated but hoped not to hear. "I see," she murmured at last. "Then this clarifies matters significantly." Without missing a beat, Mrs. Gillespie leaned back in her chair, posture shifting into something more strategic. Mia braced herself, half expecting threats. Instead, the silver-haired liaison delivered the next bombshell. "Mia, Mr. Daniel isn't just an owner in a loose sense. He is the direct majority shareholder of the Paradise Voyager line. By extension, the main heir to a substantial legacy in maritime business. Given these circumstances, our company and certain members of his family would prefer to handle this situation with discretion. We can arrange for financial support, medical care, and any living assistance you may need, provided that you cooperate in certain respects." Mia's stomach churned. She pressed a hand over her abdomen protectively. "Meaning?" "Keep quiet," she said, bitterness creeping into her tone. "Forget about him, accept hush money, and vanish? Is that it?" Mrs. Gillespie's gaze didn't waver. "I won't deny that confidentiality is essential to the arrangement. But we're not asking you to vanish, merely to avoid public revelations that could harm Mr. Daniel's position. Whether or not you wish to see him personally is a separate question, and one that might be best handled through the channels we provide." Heat flared in Mia's chest, so Daniel himself might not even be aware of his company's meddling. Did he know she was pregnant, or was the corporate machine operating on assumptions? The questions stung her. In the swirl of shock, a part of her wanted to lash out, to defend the child growing inside her, to demand that Daniel step forward and face his responsibilities. Another part recognized that, if he truly was so high above her station, perhaps she had no chance of a normal conversation without corporate lawyers interfering. She felt more alone than ever. Gathering her composure, Mia let out a shaky breath. "I don't want your money," she whispered, a note of defiance in her voice. "But this baby is his. Does he know?" Mrs. Gillespie angled her head. "He does not, at least not from us. He's been traveling extensively on business. With the rumors circulating, we decided to intervene early. However, we're willing to facilitate a meeting if you prefer. But I must warn you, Daniel's family and business partners can be very protective. Once you step into their circle, things may become complicated." A hush settled over the room. Mia's mind was a chaos of images. Daniel's gentle smile, the empty bank account at home, her parents' concerned faces, the echo of the unborn baby's heartbeat at the clinic. She had to make a decision that would shape not just her life, but that of her child. The risk of being crushed by powerful elites weighed heavily against the longing to claim Daniel's presence as a father. After a moment, Mia lifted her chin. "I don't know what I want yet," she admitted, tears hovering behind her eyes. "But I do want to speak to him face to face. Not with lawyers, not with a paycheck, just him." Mrs. Gillespie nodded. "We'll see what can be arranged. Until then, please understand it's in your best interest, legally and personally, to refrain from disclosing details about this to outsiders." Mia's hand trembled as she reached for a glass of water. For a fleeting instant, she pictured the calm waves from the cruise deck. She'd once believed the ocean symbolized freedom. Now it felt like a monstrous expanse ready to swallow her whole if she made one misstep. The older woman stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "We'll be in touch, Mia. I suggest you think carefully about the consequences of each path forward." Mia rose, her heart pounding. She gave a slight nod. No goodbyes, no platitudes. She simply turned and stepped out of the room, her thoughts whirling. Down the elevator, through the gleaming lobby, and into the bright afternoon, she walked in a daze. Karina had told her to find Daniel, to let him know about the baby. But it was clear now that the road to him was blocked by corporate walls and likely a fortress of complicated family interests. Yet as she settled into the taxi for her return, Mia clenched her hands in her lap. "I won't give up. My child deserves to know its father, or at least have the chance." She gazed out the window at the harbor, where expensive yachts bobbed on the waves, each representing a realm of wealth and power far beyond her simpler life. "I may be just a cleaning lady," Mia thought with determined resolve, "but I will not be intimidated." Days after that unsettling meeting, Mia felt as if she were trapped between two realities. On one hand, her day-to-day life went on, helping her mother with chores, clocking into her cleaning job and trying to budget for her upcoming prenatal appointments. On the other hand, her mind kept drifting to that elegant conference room with its panoramic view and to Mrs. Gillespie's poised manner of mentioning financial support and confidentiality. It all felt like a secret corridor had opened into a world of power and wealth, one where she had no real footing. Early one morning, Mia woke from a restless sleep to find a text message on her phone. It came from a number she didn't recognize. "Good morning, Mia. This is Mrs. Gillespie. We have a development. Could you please come to the Aegean Maritime Holdings office this afternoon? Transportation will be provided." She stared at the message, dread simmering in her gut. Another summons. She wondered if Daniel himself had arrived in the city or if the company had decided to move forward with some new scheme. Either way, she couldn't ignore it. If she refused, they might withdraw any chance of meeting Daniel in person. "And I need that chance," she reminded herself. By noon, a sleek black sedan pulled up in front of her apartment building, far more luxurious than the taxi from before. Mia smoothed her hair, her heart pounding as she climbed into the back seat. She tried not to feel self-conscious about her modest blouse and skirt, or about the chipped paint on the building's facade in stark contrast to the sedan's spotless interior. The driver, polite and silent, took her straight to the same glass-walled tower. Upstairs, she found Mrs. Gillespie waiting in the foyer of a private suite rather than the conference room. The older woman greeted her with a slight nod. "Mia, thank you for coming on such short notice. Please follow me." She was led into a smaller lounge, tastefully decorated. A tray of tea sat on a low table. Mia's gaze quickly scanned the room, her nerves prickling with expectation. Then, in the corner by the windows, a tall figure turned around, and Mia's breath caught. It was Daniel. He hadn't seen her yet. His eyes were fixed on the harbor below, arms crossed as if deep in thought. From behind, Mia recognized his posture immediately, that poised silhouette, the gentle slope of his shoulders. She'd wondered countless times if they'd ever be in the same space again, and now, here he was, close enough that she could reach out and touch him. Mrs. Gillespie cleared her throat quietly. "Sir," she said, "Mia has arrived." Daniel spun around and his eyes fell on her. For an instant, surprise and relief flashed across his face. "Mia," he said softly, taking a step forward. She saw a cascade of emotions mirrored in his gaze: shock, warmth, maybe even apprehension. He wore a tailored jacket, though more casual than a business suit, still more formal than the linen shirts she remembered on the cruise. Gently, Mrs. Gillespie excused herself, leaving them alone. The air felt dense, each second marked by the soft hum of air conditioning. Mia pressed her lips together, her heart hammering in her throat. Daniel broke the silence first. "They told me," he paused, swallowing. "They told me you and I had—" Another pause. "That you're expecting a child." Mia felt tears sting her eyes. It was as if the entire world narrowed to this moment, his voice and the pounding in her chest. "Yes," she whispered, clasping her hands together. "It's yours, Daniel. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. I tried to find you." He lifted a hand, gentle and trembling, his eyes searching hers for honesty. "It's okay. I believe you," he said, voice tight with pent-up emotion. I was traveling abroad. I had no idea." A swirl of relief and heartbreak rose in Mia's chest. This was Daniel, the same man she remembered. Kind eyes, soft voice, and yet now undeniably wealthy, powerful and entangled in a corporate machine. She wondered if that gentle sincerity could survive the pressures around him. "I didn't come here to ask for anything," she murmured. "But we share this. I didn't want to make decisions on my own without at least giving you the chance to know." His expression was a complex blend of guilt, tenderness, and worry. Stepping closer, Daniel guided Mia toward a nearby couch. They both sat, each perched at an angle, facing one another but still unsure how to bridge the space between them. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. "Have you been taken care of? Do you have support?" Mia's eyes moistened. She couldn't help recalling the corporate hush money offers and the quietly menacing undertone of that last meeting. "My parents help where they can," she replied, voice trembling. "We're not well off, but we get by. As for the baby, I've gone to a local clinic, just the basics." Daniel let out a breath, anguish flickering in his gaze. "I'm so sorry. I should have been there. You must have felt so alone." She nodded, tears threatening to spill over. "It's been hard, but I'm prepared to raise this baby no matter what. I just wanted you to know." A silence stretched between them, fragile but loaded with meaning. Daniel lowered his eyes, wrestling with the implications. "Mia," he said at last, "I don't want you to do this alone. Whatever you need, medical bills, living expenses, I'll handle it." She stiffened. A part of her had expected this, but she worried about becoming another problem to solve for the wealthy. "I'm not asking for a handout," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He reached out, touching her hand lightly. "I know you aren't, but this baby is mine too. Let me help, please." Their eyes locked, and for the first time since she entered the room, Mia felt a faint sense of calm slipping through her panic. This wasn't a negotiation with a faceless corporation. This was Daniel, speaking with genuine compassion. She remembered the kindness in his smile and the way he'd listened on the ship as she spoke of her hopes. She wanted desperately to believe he was sincere. After a moment, she nodded slowly. "All right," she said, her defenses easing. "Let's talk about it. But I won't be hidden away like some secret. This is my life, and the baby's." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I understand. That's fair. Things are complicated in my world," he admitted, choosing his words carefully. "My family, the board members, they hold a lot of influence. But I promise you, I won't let anyone dismiss what we have as a mere situation to cover up. We'll find a way." Mia let out a trembling exhale. She believed him, or wanted to. "Thank you," she whispered. Tears threatened again, and this time she let one slip free. Daniel hesitated only a second before wrapping an arm around her shoulders, drawing her into a gentle embrace. Her cheek rested against his chest, and she listened to the strong beat of his heart. In that moment, she remembered the swirl of ocean air on the cruise deck, the soft clink of teacups. How surreal life was, that a short encounter had led to this moment of raw vulnerability in a high-rise suite with a future child in the balance. After a few minutes, Daniel pulled back, softly brushing a tear from her cheek. "We'll need to figure out next steps," he said with quiet resolve. "Medical appointments, possibly a place where you can be comfortable. I'll want to be there, if you'll allow it. And eventually we'll have to deal with my family." Her pulse stuttered at the mention of his family. She imagined people in suits, with icy smiles, worried about the family name and corporate shares. Mia clasped her hands nervously. "How do you think they'll react?" Daniel managed a small, rueful smile. "They'll be surprised, to say the least. My mother has always pushed me toward certain alliances. Let's just say an unplanned pregnancy with someone outside their social circle wasn't part of the blueprint." He paused. "But I'm not a child. I won't let them dictate everything." The flicker of confidence in his voice reassured her. She nodded, letting herself trust him just enough. "If they try to, I don't know, push me away?" "Then I'll push back," Daniel said firmly, wrapping his hand over hers. "You're not alone, Mia. I'm here, for you and for the baby." Those words felt like a promise she'd craved for weeks, an anchor in the storm of her anxieties. Yet she knew this was only the beginning. Challenges loomed. A power struggle with his family, the possibility that the company would pressure them to avoid a public scandal. She worried, too, about how her parents and friends would see her stepping into a world so different from theirs. Still, for the first time since she found out she was pregnant, she felt a spark of hope. It wasn't about money or status. It was about the father of her child wanting to stand by her. Perhaps in the midst of everything, that was enough of a foundation to start with. They spent the next half hour talking quietly. Daniel asked for details of her prenatal checkups, her living situation, her plans for work. He jotted notes, insisting on covering a better hospital's fees. Mia, for her part, told him she refused to quit her job unless absolutely necessary. She wanted to retain her independence. He listened, respectful. Eventually, Mrs. Gillespie re-entered the room, clearing her throat delicately. Daniel turned to her with an unspoken request in his eyes. She caught it at once. "We'll facilitate whatever arrangements you both decide on," she said smoothly. "I assume, Mr. Daniel, you'll want your legal counsel involved at some point, but for now I'm pleased the two of you could speak directly." Mia felt Daniel's hand tighten slightly around hers. She glanced up at him, wondering if they were stepping into a labyrinth of contracts, NDAs, and lawyers. But Daniel merely nodded, refusing to let go of Mia's hand. "Could you arrange for Mia's ride home?" he asked Mrs. Gillespie. "And please ensure she has my personal number. No more intermediary nonsense." Mrs. Gillespie gave a crisp nod. "Of course, sir." A flicker of satisfaction warmed Mia. "At least now I can talk to him, without corporate interference." She squeezed Daniel's hand before finally letting go, a faint smile on her lips. For all the complications that loomed, that smile felt like a small victory. Soon after, Mia found herself back in the black sedan, gliding through city streets, her mind alight with possibility. She gazed out at the passing skyline, remembering Daniel's vow. "You're not alone." For so long she had feared she would carry this burden in silence, overshadowed by powerful strangers. Now there was a spark of light. Maybe, just maybe, she and Daniel could carve out a path that honored both their realities. But beneath the hope, she couldn't shake the lingering tension. If his family was truly as influential as Daniel hinted, how far would they go to protect their name? Would they welcome her into the fold or see her as a threat to their carefully curated plans? Mia rested a hand on her abdomen, the faintest swell of life pressing beneath her palm. "No matter what comes," she promised silently, "I will protect you." She glanced at the card Daniel had pressed into her hand. A simple white rectangle with a personal cell number scrawled in neat handwriting. At least now, I won't have to do it alone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for this moment in the cushioned back seat, a gentle wave of relief washed over Mia. One step at a time, she told herself as the sedan wove its way toward her little apartment, the place that would soon become too small to hold the future unfolding before her eyes. Evening light filtered into Mia's small apartment, casting soft shadows across the worn-out furniture. It had been a week since she and Daniel met again, and Mia's life now felt like it pivoted on two distinct axes. One revolved around her everyday world, helping her mom cook rice and beans for dinner, listening to her father's stories about car troubles at the mechanic shop, and continuing her cleaning shifts in various office buildings. The other axis belonged to an unfamiliar sphere of quiet phone calls and hushed updates, Daniel's texts asking about her health, cryptic messages from Aegean Maritime Holdings urging patience while they organized further steps, and the looming possibility that his powerful family might intervene in ways she could not predict. Yet for all her anxiety, Mia couldn't deny a blossoming sense of hope. She and Daniel talked every night by phone. Sometimes their calls were short. He was in a different time zone for a business trip, but they spoke with an openness that soothed her. He asked detailed questions about her doctor visits, about how she felt waking up, about her mood swings. In turn, Mia learned bits and pieces about his complicated family dynamic, shareholders pushing him to formalize alliances with other high society families, whispers of a possible engagement his mother had once tried to arrange. But Daniel's voice carried warmth whenever he mentioned Mia and their future child. He swore none of that old talk mattered now. At home, her parents watched warily as Mia returned from shifts more tired each day. She had not told them everything, only that Daniel wanted to help and that he was the father. Her father especially remained guarded. One evening, he finally confronted her while she gathered laundry in the living room. "Mia," he began, using a gentler tone than usual, "are you sure about this man? You said he's wealthy, powerful. Sometimes, that world isn't kind to people like us." She felt tears prick her eyes but held them back. "Papa, I know it's risky, but he's not just some stranger now. He wants to be here, and I want our baby to have a dad." Her father exhaled, nodding slowly. "All right, just be cautious. Money changes people." His voice wavered with concern. "I will," she promised, folding a shirt carefully. "And I'll stand my ground if things get bad," she told herself. 3 days later, a sleek car appeared again outside her apartment building. This time, Mia was expecting it. Daniel had arranged a prenatal appointment for her at a private clinic downtown. He insisted on meeting her there, saying he had a surprise. Mia gripped her phone in her lap during the ride, heart fluttering with excitement and nerves. A private clinic was far from the modest places she'd visited before. When they arrived, Daniel stood outside the glass doors, wearing a simple button-down shirt and dark trousers. His face brightened the moment he spotted her through the car window. She felt a rush of relief. He wasn't hidden behind some entourage or corporate lawyers this time. He greeted her with a gentle hug. "You look wonderful," he said softly, eyes searching her face. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, but okay," she admitted, relaxing in his presence. A small wave of morning nausea still clung to her, but seeing Daniel buoyed her spirits. "You?" He gave a faint smile. "Nervous," he confessed. "This is a first for me, you know, coming to a doctor's visit." Warmth filled her chest. He's actually here, she thought, stepping through the clinic's door with him at her side. Inside, everything smelled of fresh paint and high-quality disinfectant. Soft classical music played in the waiting area, and a cheerful receptionist guided them to a private consultation room. The difference from her usual budget clinic was stark: plush seating, magazines that looked brand new, and discreet staff who seemed prepared for VIP clients. The sonogram technician, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, ushered Mia onto the exam chair with practiced gentleness. Daniel stood by, watching with rapt attention. When the technician squirted cool gel on Mia's abdomen and began to move the ultrasound wand, Daniel reached for Mia's hand. Their fingers interlocked, a silent promise to face the moment together. "There we go," said the technician softly, pointing to the screen. "That's the baby." Mia's breath caught at the grayscale image flickering with rapid movements. She'd seen a basic ultrasound before at her local clinic, but it had been rushed and the machinery older. Now, the monitor revealed clearer details. A small form, tiny limbs beginning to distinguish themselves. Tears welled in Mia's eyes, the emotional weight hitting her anew. "That's our child." Next to her, Daniel inhaled sharply. "Oh my," he whispered, squeezing Mia's hand. The raw emotion in his voice nearly broke her composure. That's incredible," he murmured, gaze locked on the little life they had created. A few seconds later, the rhythmic pulse of the baby's heartbeat filled the room, amplified by the machine. Mia felt an overwhelming wave of protectiveness, of love. She glanced up at Daniel. His eyes were shining, his usually controlled expression transformed into awe. The technician smiled. "Everything seems to be developing on schedule. The heartbeat is strong, about 12 weeks. Would you like a printout?" Mia nodded silently. It wasn't her first ultrasound picture, but it felt far more real having Daniel here. As the technician wiped Mia's belly clean and handed over glossy images, Daniel carefully studied them like precious artifacts. "I'll set up all the follow-up appointments," he said, almost to himself, as though planning a strategy. He turned to Mia. "We can do them here or somewhere you're comfortable. Whatever you want, it's yours." Mia was about to respond when her phone buzzed in her bag. Trying not to be rude, she withdrew it to glance at the screen and froze. The caller ID read "restricted." Daniel noticed her startled look. "It might be my company's main line," he offered, noticing her hesitation. "Go ahead." She accepted the call, stepping to the side. A crisp female voice she recognized instantly spoke. "Mrs. Gillespie." Great timing, Mia thought with a flicker of irritation. "Mia, good afternoon. Sorry to disturb you, but there's a matter that requires your immediate attention," Mrs. Gillespie said. "We've received word that Daniel's mother, Mrs. Blackwell, wishes to meet you both. She's just arrived in town unexpectedly. Something about needing clarity and ensuring compliance." Mia's stomach twisted. Daniel's mother. She recalled him mentioning how his family had curated his social circles. "Does Daniel know?" she asked quietly, meeting his questioning gaze from across the room. "We're informing him next," Mrs. Gillespie replied, "but she specifically wants to see you in person and soon. I'd advise you to attend with him." Mia swallowed hard. "I'll talk to Daniel. We'll see." She ended the call, her pulse racing. Daniel approached, concern etched across his face. "What happened?" "Your mother is here," she said softly. "She wants to meet us. Today, apparently." His expression darkened, the softness from moments earlier replaced by a guarded tension. "That was quick. She never visits me without a reason." The clinic's hallway fell quiet around them, the memory of their baby's heartbeat still lingering in the air. Mia felt a flood of conflicting emotions, pride at Daniel's love for this child, dread at confronting a powerful mother who might see Mia as an unwelcome intruder. He set the ultrasound prints aside, resting a hand on her shoulder. "We don't have to do this if you're not ready," he said gently. "I can handle her alone." She forced a small smile. "No," she replied, sliding her hand over his. "I can't hide. This baby is ours. I want to face whatever comes head on." Daniel nodded, admiration flickering in his eyes. "All right, let's go together." They wrapped up at the clinic quickly, thanking the staff. Before leaving, they scheduled the next appointment. Then Daniel led Mia to his car, a sleek, midnight blue luxury sedan parked discreetly in a private bay. He insisted on driving himself rather than having a chauffeur or corporate driver. Mia appreciated the sense of normalcy it provided, even if the leather seats and sophisticated tech displayed his wealth. As they maneuvered through city traffic, Mia gripped the ultrasound photos in her lap. "Your mother. Is she going to hate me for this?" Daniel's jaw clenched. "She doesn't hate anyone outright, but she's very controlling. She has a specific vision of how everything should be in my life, and this, us, doesn't fit her blueprint." He glanced at Mia, voice softening. "But that's her problem, not ours. I'm not letting her push you away." Still, Mia couldn't quell the queasy feeling in her gut. The pregnancy hormones didn't help. She closed her eyes, letting the hum of the engine lull her. "Stay calm," she told herself. "Stand tall for the baby's sake." They arrived at a boutique hotel known for its privacy, where Mrs. Gillespie had arranged a suite for Daniel's mother. Daniel parked in a reserved spot. His hand found Mia's, giving it a reassuring squeeze as they walked into the opulent lobby. Ornate chandeliers glimmered overhead and the hush of wealth permeated the space. A sleek elevator carried them to a high floor. Mia's heart hammered with each ascending level. By the time they stepped out into a carpeted hallway, she was practically trembling. Daniel guided her gently, noticing her nerves. They approached a door guarded by a discreet attendant who stepped aside upon recognizing Daniel. Inside, the suite felt tense with waiting. Tall windows overlooked the cityscape, but Mia's eyes fixed on the elegant woman seated at a polished glass table, Daniel's mother. She wore an impeccably tailored jacket and skirt, her posture regal, silver-streaked hair pinned neatly. The resemblance to Daniel was faint yet undeniable in the shape of her eyes and the tilt of her chin. "Mother," Daniel said, stepping forward, voice controlled. "This is Mia." Those eyes swept over Mia, taking in every detail, her simple outfit, the ultrasound prints clasped in her hand. Her expression didn't break into a smile. Instead, it remained poised and calculating, as though assessing a business merger. "So," she said, her tone cultured and cool, "you're the young lady my son has chosen to complicate his future." Mia swallowed hard, forcing herself not to shrink under that gaze. Daniel stiffened, but she gently placed a hand on his arm, signaling that she could speak for herself. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Blackwell," Mia said, voice trembling but polite. "I understand this is sudden, but Daniel and we're having a child." A faint arch of the woman's eyebrow revealed her skepticism. She clasped her hands on the table, each finger adorned with tasteful, expensive rings. "Yes, I've heard. I'd hoped the rumors were exaggerated." Daniel stepped closer to Mia, protective. "This is not a rumor. The baby is real, Mother, and so are my intentions." Mrs. Blackwell cast him a brief glance before returning her cool gaze to Mia. "Well, let us be frank. This union was not the one we envisioned for Daniel. Our family is influential. Such an entanglement with an unknown girl from modest means." She paused. "It threatens to disrupt many carefully laid plans." Mia felt her blood prickle. Anger stirred, but she kept her voice as calm as she could. "I'm not here to ruin anything. I only want to do right by my child." A silent standoff crackled in the air. Eventually, Mrs. Blackwell sighed, as though fatigued by lesser mortals' dramas. "And how do you plan to handle this, Daniel? I assume you do not intend to marry the girl." Her eyes flickered to Mia. "No offense, my dear, but the family's affairs must remain structured." Daniel set his jaw. "You assume too much. Mia and I haven't discussed marriage, but that's our decision, not yours or the board's." Mrs. Blackwell's lips thinned. "The board will certainly voice opinions if any scandal emerges, particularly if Ms. Mia decides to go public. But I suspect that won't be necessary if she's provided with appropriate arrangements." A wave of protectiveness coursed through Mia. She'd faced intimidation from the corporate side already. She wasn't about to let Daniel's mother corner her the same way. "I'm not a threat," she stated, her voice clearer now, "and I won't be hidden away. Daniel and I will figure out a path that respects both sides. Mrs. Blackwell studied Mia with a hint of reluctant acknowledgement, perhaps noting her determination. Then she turned her attention to Daniel. You're willing to risk your inheritance? The position you've built in the company? All for this relationship? Daniel took a steady breath, then reached for Mia's hand in a clear demonstration of unity. Yes, Mother. If it comes to that, I am. His voice was firm, unwavering. My child's future matters more to me than the board's old guard. Mia's heart thumped. Daniel's declaration was as comforting as it was terrifying. She tightened her grip on his hand. Mrs. Blackwell stared at them, a silent battle of wills. Finally, she shifted in her seat. Well then, it seems you leave me little choice. We'll have to negotiate a compromise, some arrangement that won't destroy Daniel's standing but also satisfies your needs, Ms. Mia. Biting back an angry retort, Mia merely nodded. She recognized that behind the crisp words lay the reality of powerful people shifting gears. Mrs. Blackwell had to cede ground if Daniel was this resolute. Yet how gracious or treacherous would that ground be? Quietly, Mrs. Blackwell signaled them to sit, gesturing to 2 chairs across the table. Mia braced for a delicate negotiation, a meeting that would shape her future far more than she'd ever expected. She glanced down at the ultrasound pictures in her hand, remembering the baby's strong heartbeat. This is for you, little one, she thought. I'll navigate any labyrinth if it means ensuring your place in this family, or forging our own path if they won't accept us. Drawing a steady breath, Mia sat down, Daniel's hand still clasped in hers, ready to face the formidable Mrs. Blackwell and all the complexities that came with being part of his world. The air in the suite felt thick with underlying tension, like a storm cloud hovering on the horizon. Mia sat beside Daniel, heart pounding, but her posture stayed upright. Across from them, Mrs. Blackwell radiated a polished elegance that couldn't mask the steel in her demeanor. An uneasy silence hung in the space until Daniel cleared his throat, determined to shift the balance. Mother, he began in a measured tone, we'd like to hear your thoughts on this compromise you mentioned. What exactly did you have in mind? Mrs. Blackwell's gaze flicked over to Mia, assessing as though deciding how candid to be. At last, she folded her hands in her lap. Daniel, your position in the family business is crucial, and so is your reputation. If it becomes widely known that you fathered a child with someone outside our sphere, there will be chatter. Stockholders and business partners might question your reliability. It's not fair, but it's how these circles work. I understand, Daniel said calmly, though his jaw tensed. But Mia and I aren't looking to hide. We just want to navigate this responsibly. Mrs. Blackwell inclined her head. Precisely. Which is why I propose a carefully managed announcement. We can handle it discreetly at first, informing key stakeholders that you've formed a serious attachment. If down the line you choose marriage, so be it. But for now, the family will provide Mia with the financial and social support she needs, ensuring she's seen as part of the fold rather than an inconvenient side note. Mia felt a flicker of indignation, but also a strange relief. Mrs. Blackwell was offering in her aloof manner a path toward acceptance rather than outright dismissal. Still, phrases like "provide Mia with support" struck a nerve, as though she were a stray puppy requiring shelter. Daniel tilted his head. I'm not entirely opposed to a coordinated approach, but let's be clear. Mia isn't some case for the PR team to handle. She's my partner, and this child is our family. Mrs. Blackwell's expression barely changed. Of course, she said, a refined murmur. But you must understand that we do need to involve public relations at some point. The story will inevitably break, and it's better if we're the ones shaping the narrative. Then, her eyes turned to Mia with measured politeness. And you, my dear, what do you say? Are you willing to accept the family's guidance so we can minimize chaos for Daniel's sake and for yours? The question forced Mia to weigh her pride against practicality. She recalled a time not so long ago when she feared facing this powerful matriarch alone. Now she had Daniel's unwavering support, but the stakes remained high. Minimize chaos or give up control? Her baby's future was in the crosshairs. She took a breath. "I won't say I'm comfortable with the idea of being managed," she began, keeping her tone steady. "But I do understand the world you live in is different. If this helps ensure stability for the baby and Daniel, I'm open to talking about it. However," her gaze flicked directly to Mrs. Blackwell, "I need you to understand I won't be cast aside if something goes wrong. I won't be silenced or made to feel like a burden." For a moment, the older woman's eyes revealed a hint of grudging respect. "I see. You have a spine. That's good." She paused, tapping her manicured fingernails lightly on the table. "We'll include you in every major decision regarding announcements, living arrangements, and so on. Naturally, the family will insist on certain boundaries, such as no unapproved interviews, no social media leaks." Daniel interjected, "I'd also like to see arrangements made for Mia's comfort and safety. We should have her moved into a place that meets her needs. Her current apartment is less than ideal, especially for a child. Mia, you know I'm not trying to force anything on you, but let me at least provide that." Mia's cheeks warmed. She glanced down at her hands. "That's a big change for me," she murmured. "I need to think it through, talk to my parents. But maybe, eventually, yes." For the first time, Mrs. Blackwell offered something close to a smile, albeit faint. "That's prudent. Family should be consulted. In the meantime," she continued, reaching into a sleek leather folder, "I have some documents outlining the family trust's resources for child support, educational funds, and legal protections for the unborn child." She set the papers on the table. "We can discuss them at length, or if you prefer, you can take them to review with an independent lawyer. I assume you'll need time." Mia eyed the documents, heart pounding. The pages seemed to symbolize the gulf between her humble world and Daniel's. She stole a look at Daniel. His gaze was reassuring, encouraging her to take things at her own pace. Then she dipped her head in a nod. "I'll look them over," she said softly. "I appreciate the offer of transparency." Mrs. Blackwell gave a curt nod. "Good. Transparency serves us all." A subtle shift in the atmosphere hinted that they'd reached a tentative truce. Daniel, sensing the meeting was winding down, stood from his chair, guiding Mia to do the same. Mrs. Blackwell rose with them. "Will you be returning to your apartment?" she asked Mia, careful not to let scorn color her voice. "Daniel could bring you somewhere more private if you'd prefer." Mia bristled at the hint. "My parents are expecting me," she replied, polite but firm. "I'll stay with them for now. When the time is right, we'll discuss other arrangements." "Of course," Mrs. Blackwell said. She stepped closer, and for an instant Mia expected a dismissive wave. Instead, Daniel's mother extended a hand. Mia, surprised, met it with her own in a light handshake. "Thank you for meeting with me," Mrs. Blackwell said, her words measured. "I see now that Daniel's affection for you isn't impulsive." There was a note of reluctant respect in her tone. "But remember, my dear, the family name carries weight. Honor that, and we'll protect you. Cross us, and the consequences could be severe." Mia's skin prickled at the implied threat, but she dipped her head. "Understood." Moments later, Mia and Daniel exited the suite, the hotel corridor seeming brighter by comparison. They walked in silence to the elevator, the tension of the encounter still buzzing in the air. Once inside the elevator, Daniel exhaled, leaning against the mirrored wall. "That could have gone a lot worse," he murmured. "I'm sorry my mother is so intense." Mia offered a tremulous smile, letting her shoulder brush his. "I survived," she whispered, resting a hand over her stomach. "For the baby, I'd do anything." Daniel wrapped an arm around her, pulling her gently to his side. "We're in this together," When they reached the lobby, Daniel insisted on driving her home. Traffic blurred past the car windows as Mia gazed at the city lights. She had stepped into a new phase of her life, one in which she was bound to Daniel's powerful family, for better or worse. Though uncertain, she was no longer alone. At Mia's apartment building, Daniel parked discreetly nearby. Before letting her out, he turned, eyes full of concern. "I'll call you tomorrow, or maybe come by if that's okay with your folks." Mia nodded, a warm flutter in her chest. "They'll be surprised, but it's fine. They need to see that you're serious." He gently took her hand, pressing it to his heart. "I'll show them. And you. I promise." They said their goodbyes, lingering in a soft embrace. As Mia climbed the worn stairs to her unit, she heard the sedan drive off, leaving her with a swirl of hope and apprehension. Inside, her parents both looked up from the dinner table with anxious curiosity. Mia hesitated only a moment before crossing the threshold to share, in halting words, the incredible shift happening in her life. Her mother grasped the concept with wide eyes. "They want to help you? And the baby?" "In their own way, yes," Mia answered. "They also want to control how news gets out. But Daniel is supporting me." Her father's frown softened. "If he's sincere, that's good. But be careful, daughter. Rich folks sometimes act kindly and then change their minds." Mia swallowed. "I know, but I do trust Daniel." She ate her meal with them, receiving cautious optimism from her parents. Later that night, she lay awake in her small bedroom, staring at the ultrasound pictures. She remembered Mrs. Blackwell's penetrating eyes, the swirl of corporate words about deals and announcements. But more than any of that, she recalled the look of awe on Daniel's face when he heard their baby's heartbeat. That was real, untainted by wealth or power. Still, the path ahead was strewn with unknown pitfalls. The family's acceptance was tepid at best, contingent upon Mia playing by their rules. "I'll do what's needed for the baby, but I won't let them walk over me," she vowed silently. She traced a finger over the ultrasound image, feeling a surge of maternal love. "Little one, I'll protect you, no matter what alliances I have to make. We will find our place, even if we have to carve it out ourselves." She closed her eyes, exhaustion finally tugging her under, lulled by the knowledge that at least now, the doors to Daniel's world were open, however cautiously. And through those doors, she might just find a future where her child, despite being born from two vastly different worlds, could belong to both. The following few weeks brought Mia a strange mix of comfort and unease. On one hand, Daniel was truly present in her life, calling her every day and visiting her small apartment at least once a week. He came bearing groceries, vitamin supplements, and occasional gifts, simple things like soft slippers or a cozy blanket for her aching back. At first, Mia's parents watched him with guarded suspicion, but over shared dinners and gentle conversation, they gradually relaxed. Her father even found himself swapping stories with Daniel about car repairs, smiling wryly when Daniel admitted he was a disaster with anything mechanical. On the other hand, the reality of Daniel's high-stakes world crept ever closer. Calls from Mrs. Gillespie became more frequent, her tone polite, yet pressing. She asked for updates on Mia's appointments, hinted at upcoming announcements, and tried to schedule social coaching sessions for Mia, lessons in etiquette, posture, and media handling. Each phone call made Mia's stomach twist. She didn't want to be polished into some plastic version of herself. One afternoon, after finishing a shift at a downtown office, Mia stepped out onto the sidewalk to find a sleek black car waiting. It wasn't Daniel's. The driver, wearing an immaculate uniform, hopped out and respectfully addressed her. "Ms. Mia, I've been asked to bring you to the Helmsley Tower. Mrs. Blackwell has requested a brief meeting." Mia's pulse raced. She hadn't expected any meeting that day, certainly not with Daniel's mother, but refusing on the spot could create more tension than she could handle. Exhaling shakily, Mia climbed into the back seat. The car wove through the city streets until it reached Helmsley Tower, a gleaming skyscraper known to be one of the headquarters for Aegean Maritime Holdings' financial subsidiaries. Up in a private boardroom on the 40th floor, Mia felt dwarfed by panoramic windows and modern decor. Mrs. Blackwell stood near a marble conference table, wearing a tailored gray suit. Beside her, a younger woman, poised and elegant, handed over a binder full of documents. "Thank you for coming on short notice," Mrs. Blackwell said, her voice echoing in the glossy space. She gestured for Mia to sit. "I realize your schedule may be tight, but certain matters can't wait." Mia settled into a leather chair, unsure what to expect. "Is this about the announcement?" Mrs. Blackwell nodded. "Precisely. The family has decided we should proceed with a controlled statement to the press. Nothing flashy. Just a brief note confirming Daniel's relationship with you and the fact that you're expecting a child. We'll emphasize that it's a private matter and request respect from the media." Relief sparked in Mia's chest. She had dreaded some orchestrated spectacle, like a grand gala unveiling her pregnancy. A discreet notice seemed more manageable. Still, she worried about the attention this might draw. "I understand, but I'm not used to dealing with press. How will it affect my family, my job?" The older woman regarded her carefully. "Your personal details won't be elaborated upon beyond your name and the fact you and Daniel are committed. Of course, the curiosity will be intense at first, but we have methods to mitigate prying eyes. I do recommend not returning to that cleaning agency for a while. They might be hounded by reporters." Mia's stomach clenched. She wanted to maintain her independence, to keep working. "So, I have to quit?" "Temporarily," Mrs. Blackwell said gently. "If you wish, we can provide a monthly stipend. You can reconsider your employment once the initial frenzy subsides." Words of protest crowded Mia's mind. She didn't want to be seen as unemployed and coddled. But realistically, the moment the news broke, paparazzi might swarm her modest workplace, invading her co-workers' privacy. She sighed, thinking about the baby's well-being too. "All right," she said softly. "Temporarily, but I won't hide forever." Mrs. Blackwell's lips quirked in the tiniest hint of a smile. "I wouldn't expect you to. Now, we have a draft of the press statement. Please read it." She slid a printed document across the table. Mia scanned the statement. It was short, a simple confirmation that Daniel Blackwell and Ms. Mia were expecting a child, requesting privacy, stating they planned to co-parent cooperatively. The final lines requested that the media respect boundaries. It felt formal, but not exploitative. She exhaled, relieved it didn't spin any false narrative. "Seems okay," she admitted, giving a small nod. "You'll release it soon?" "Likely next week. We'll coordinate with Daniel, of course." Mrs. Blackwell tapped her manicured nails on the table, then paused. "There's one more item to address. The board is uneasy about your living situation. They suggest, quite strongly, that you move into a safer, more private residence. We can arrange a furnished apartment in a secure building if you prefer not to be too close to the family estate." Mia recognized the push for what it was, an attempt to sequester her from prying eyes and align with the polished image they wanted. But at least it came with some measure of respect for her choice. "I'd like to talk to Daniel first," she said, measuring her words, "but I get that security might become an issue. My neighborhood isn't the safest." Mrs. Blackwell nodded. "Very well. I'll wait to hear from you both." She stood, effectively signaling the end of the discussion. "I realize this is an enormous adjustment, Mia, but you're carrying my grandchild, so believe me when I say it's in everyone's interest to ensure your comfort. Try to see that, even if our methods seem abrupt." A swirl of conflicting emotions stung Mia's chest. She wanted to resent the older woman's controlling approach, but the mention of "my grandchild" was the first time she'd heard Mrs. Blackwell acknowledge the baby with any personal warmth. Mia blinked back the unexpected tears, replying softly, "I do see. Thank you." Soon she was heading back down in the elevator, documents in hand, body awash in tension. As the city skyline appeared through the glass walls, she reminded herself that she had a choice. Maybe not an easy one, but still a choice. She could accept the family's help and deal with the potential loss of privacy, or she could reject it and stand on her own. But would that deprive Daniel of fatherhood or risk the baby's comfort? She needed Daniel's input. He called that evening, the second she stepped off the bus in her neighborhood. "Hey, how'd it go? Mother told me she was meeting you." Mia explained the proposed press announcement and the suggestion of a new apartment. His voice grew thoughtful. "I don't like them pulling you around without me, but it sounds less invasive than I feared. Are you okay?" "I think so," she admitted, exhaustion lacing her words. "I'm worried, but maybe it's best if we at least consider their plan. It's better than random tabloids ambushing me on the street." He agreed to meet the next day to discuss details. Mia felt a surge of reassurance. At least we're handling this as a team. That night, she showed her parents the press statement. They read it with wide eyes, her mother biting her lip at the idea of Mia's pregnancy being broadcast to the world. In the end, they nodded acceptance, hugging her and wishing for the best. The next day, Daniel arrived with a gentle knock on the apartment door. Her father offered him tea in the cramped living room. The two men chatted more comfortably now, while Mia's mother quietly set out snacks. Then Daniel turned his focus to Mia, holding a small binder of his own. "I looked into a few safe properties," he said gently, flipping through photos of apartments. "We could pick something near your parents so you can visit easily. Someplace with security so you won't have to worry about strangers at your door." Mia's heart clenched. "I do want to be safe for the baby's sake," she said quietly. "And for me. But it feels so sudden, moving out of here." She stole a glance at her parents, who pretended not to overhear, though their faces showed mixed emotions: pride at her chance for stability, sorrow that she might leave home. Daniel leaned closer, voice soft. "We don't have to rush, but the moment the press release goes live, it might be chaos. You can decide to move after that, or wait and see. I'll support you either way." She nodded, letting his sincerity wash over her. "All right. Let's see how the press reacts. Then we'll figure it out." Daniel's gaze flicked around the modest living room. Worn sofa, chipped paint on the walls, the humble warmth of a home that had nurtured Mia's childhood. "I want you to feel comfortable," he murmured. "Wherever you are, that's the priority." She reached for his hand, a small smile tugging at her lips. Despite everything, she felt an undeniable wave of gratitude that Daniel was in this with her, not pushing her to do anything solely on the family's timetable. The next week passed in a blur. At Aegean Maritime Holdings, the communications team hammered out final details. Daniel insisted on personally reviewing the statement for authenticity, ensuring no language undermined Mia's autonomy. Mrs. Blackwell surprisingly acquiesced, apparently satisfied that the essential message, "Daniel is committed to this child, the family stands behind them, respect our privacy," remained intact. Early one Monday morning, Mia woke to find her phone buzzing non-stop. A major newswire had released the official statement. Online outlets were ablaze with the headline, "Heir to Blackwell Maritime Empire expecting child with former cruise staff member." By the time Mia looked at social media, she saw hundreds of comments speculating about the relationship. Some posts were kind, praising Daniel for stepping up, congratulating the couple. Others were cruel, calling Mia a gold digger or mocking the disparity in their backgrounds. Her heart squeezed painfully at the vitriol. She tried to shut off her phone, to block out the onslaught of strangers' opinions, but knocks on her apartment door started soon after. A handful of local reporters had discovered her address. Her mother ushered them away, but the experience left Mia rattled. Grabbing a bag of essentials, she texted Daniel in a rush. "They're here. I need help." Within half an hour, a familiar black sedan arrived outside. Daniel emerged, ignoring the cameras. He guided Mia into the car with a gentle hand on her back, scanning the small crowd of reporters with steely resolve. "We'll be safe at a hotel, or I can take you to a friend's place." Shaken, Mia nodded, tears brimming. She hated feeling chased from her own home, but seeing the reporters flash photos and shout questions about her baby made her tremble with anger and fear. Daniel slid into the driver's seat, ignoring the frantic calls from behind. Soon the car merged into traffic, leaving the chaos behind. "You okay?" he asked quietly, eyes glancing at her in the mirror. She sat in the back seat, hugging her arms. "This will die down once they see we're not feeding them juicy gossip." She swallowed hard, leaning her head against the seat. "I'm okay. It's all so fast." "It is." His voice was soft. "But we'll deal with it together." Mia closed her eyes, trying to steady her heartbeat. This was the cost of stepping into Daniel's world. As terrifying as it felt, she couldn't turn back now, nor did she want to. For the sake of the child stirring in her belly, for the sake of love that was quietly blossoming between her and Daniel, she had to endure the storm. A hush fell inside the luxury hotel suite, a temporary sanctuary where Daniel had whisked Mia to escape the media onslaught. Though smaller than the sprawling penthouse owned by his family, this suite was still a world away from Mia's cramped home. Plush carpets muted every footstep, and heavy drapes shielded the windows from prying lenses below. Mia sank onto the velvety sofa, exhaling shakily. The events of the morning, the reporters at her door, the jarring headlines, replayed in her mind like a bad dream. Daniel slipped off his jacket, draping it over a nearby chair, then crossed the suite to bring her a glass of water. "Here," he murmured gently, pressing the cool glass into her hand. "Take slow sips." "Thanks." Mia's voice trembled just enough to betray her nerves. She drank, trying to steady herself. "How do you do this, Daniel? Live under such scrutiny?" He perched next to her, his arm resting along the back of the couch. "I grew up with it, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Usually I avoid the spotlight. My mother's the one who thrives on managing public perception. I never wanted to be a public figure." Mia managed a weak smile. "Well, we're quite the headline now." His hand found hers. "Give it a few days. The press will move on, especially when they see we aren't feeding them drama. Right now, they're just after the rags-to-riches love story angle." She snorted softly. "They make it sound like I set a trap to become your Cinderella." "Hey," Daniel said firmly, brushing a lock of hair from her eyes. "You know that's not what happened. And anyone who bothers to know you will see the truth." His certainty warmed her heart, but she couldn't ignore a flicker of self-doubt. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Still, I feel guilty pulling you into this. You have so many business responsibilities, and now the tabloids are going to hound you even more." He pressed a gentle kiss to her temple. "You didn't pull me in. We're in this together, by choice. Remember that." Her eyes misted with tears of relief. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. A quick glance showed Mrs. Blackwell's name lighting the screen. Daniel sighed. She's probably calling about damage control. He pressed accept and placed it on speaker. "Hello, Mother." "Daniel," came the crisp reply. "I take it you've seen the coverage. Reporters are swarming your father's estate, and I've had 3 calls from the board worried about any negative impact on our stock prices. Not to mention the tabloids calling Mia a gold digger. It's all quite messy." Mia flinched at the phrase. Daniel's hand tightened over hers, silently reassuring her. "I expected as much," he said coolly. "We released the statement. We're not fueling rumors. The frenzy will calm." "Perhaps," Mrs. Blackwell allowed, her tone clipped. "But in the meantime, we need to ensure Mia's safety and your public image. I suggest a brief television interview. Just a calm, polite sit-down where the two of you clarify the situation. Show that this is a genuine relationship, not a scandal. We can arrange it on our terms." Mia's stomach clenched. A TV interview was the last thing she wanted. She recalled how just that morning she'd panicked at the sight of cameras outside her doorstep. Now Daniel's mother wanted her to voluntarily face the media? She swallowed hard, forcing herself to keep quiet while Daniel replied. "I'm not sure that's necessary," Daniel said, frowning at the phone. "We gave a statement. That should be enough." Mrs. Blackwell's sigh crackled through the speaker. "Enough for people who read polite press releases. But the tabloids are relentless. A short, well-orchestrated interview could settle the rumors, humanize Mia to the public, reduce the feeding frenzy. The choice is yours, but my advice is to address it head-on." There was a pause, and then in a gentler tone, Mrs. Blackwell added, "Mia, dear, if you're listening, I understand this is overwhelming, but I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't think it would help. You and Daniel would have complete oversight of the questions." Mia exhaled, tilting her head toward Daniel. In the silence, he looked at her, eyebrows raised in a question. She knew he was silently asking for her input. She felt torn. An interview sounded terrifying. Yet if it meant quelling the hostile rumors, perhaps it was the lesser of two evils. She finally spoke. "Mrs. Blackwell, I'm scared to be on camera. But if it really helps keep my family from being harassed, maybe it's worth it. Could I think about it?" A thread of sympathy colored Mrs. Blackwell's voice. "Of course. Take a day or two. Let me know. In the meantime, I'll be coordinating with our legal team to handle defamation if certain outlets cross the line. Rest assured, you'll have support." They wrapped up the call, the tension in Mia's shoulders barely easing. She set aside the water glass, burying her face in her hands for a moment. "A TV interview, Daniel? I never imagined this. My life's so far from what it was a few months ago." He shifted closer, gently pulling her hands down. "It's up to you. I'll stand by whatever you decide. We could ignore it, but then the tabloids might keep hounding you. A controlled interview might let us tell our story our way." Mia drew a shaky breath. "I'm not even sure what that story is. We barely knew each other when—" She trailed off, gazing down at her baby bump, more visible with each passing day. "Now we're bound in front of the whole world." Daniel cupped her chin, tilting her face toward his. His eyes shone with tender resolve. "We might not have planned this, but it doesn't mean it isn't real. I care about you. About us. The baby. We'll tell them that, honestly." A warmth spread in Mia's chest, soothing some of her anxiety. She nodded. "Okay. Let me sleep on it." He pressed his lips to her forehead. "Of course." They spent the rest of the day hidden away, ordering room service and watching an old comedy on the suite's oversized television. At one point, Daniel stepped out for a phone call with a board member. Mia overheard fragments of business jargon but understood little. While he was gone, she checked her phone to find dozens of missed calls from old coworkers, plus text messages from acquaintances congratulating her or asking if the rumors were true. Feeling overwhelmed, she turned the phone off, seeking a moment of peace. Later that night, Daniel offered to take her home, but Mia hesitated. Her parents had phoned, warning that a couple of journalists were still lingering around the neighborhood, so she agreed to stay at the hotel, just for one night. Daniel, respectful of her comfort, booked an adjacent suite so she could have privacy if she wished. Yet as they prepared for bed, Mia found herself too restless to lie alone in a strange place. Eventually, she padded into Daniel's suite in her pajamas, eyes downcast with vulnerability. "Could you just hold me? I can't sleep," she whispered, embarrassment creeping into her voice. Daniel's expression was gentle, free of judgment. He nodded, pulling back the blanket. She curled into his arms, her cheek pressed to his chest. There was no urgency or passion, only a deep well of comfort and understanding. The sound of his steady heartbeat lulled her closer to rest, her hand instinctively resting over her belly. "Thank you," she murmured in the darkness. "I feel safe with you." He kissed her hair. "I'm here, Mia. Always." As they drifted toward sleep, a thought threaded through Mia's mind. This is what a family can feel like: tenderness, safety, a place to belong. The looming weight of public scrutiny, corporate demands, and disapproving stares from some corners of Daniel's world pressed in from all sides. But in that moment, cocooned in the hush of night, there was only the subtle promise that love and honesty might just be enough to guide them forward. Morning came with golden light peeking around the drawn curtains. Mia stirred, realizing she'd slept more soundly than she had in weeks. Daniel was already up, seated at a small table reading messages on his phone. He glanced over, offering a warm, slightly shy smile. "Morning. Hope you slept better." She stretched. "Surprisingly, yes. I ordered breakfast if you're hungry." He gestured at a covered tray, steam gently rising from a coffee pot. Mia slipped out of bed to join him, picking at scrambled eggs and fruit while Daniel sipped coffee. They shared a few quiet minutes, discussing mundane things, what brand of diapers might be best one day, or whether Mia needed new maternity clothes soon. The normalcy felt like a blessing after all the drama. Then, as if on cue, Daniel's phone rang. He peered at the screen, grimacing. "It's Gillespie, probably urgent." He answered, mumbling acknowledgments, brow furrowing. After a moment, he ended the call and looked at Mia. "It's about the interview. A major news network is interested, and Mother wants an answer soon. They're pushing for it to be recorded this weekend." Her stomach tumbled. "Already?" He shrugged helplessly. "They want to strike while the story's hot, control the narrative before the tabloids spin wilder tales." Mia exhaled, recalling her resolution to decide soon. "Is this really what I want?" She gazed at Daniel, seeing genuine concern mingled with quiet hope. "Okay," she said, voice trembling just a little. "Let's do it. If it's going to happen, I'd rather do it on our terms." Daniel let out a long breath of relief. "We'll have guidelines. No invasive questions about your personal finances or your family, nothing that isn't strictly relevant. We can set conditions." She gave a small nod, trying to muster courage. "Yes, I just promise you'll stay by my side the whole time." He slid his hand into hers, fingers lacing. "Always. We'll face them together." The rest of the week seemed to pass in a blur. Lawyers, PR consultants, and even a discreet stylist popped into Mia's life, all orchestrated under Mrs. Blackwell's watchful eye. Mia drew the line at too much meddling. She refused to do any radical makeover and insisted on wearing a dress she felt comfortable in rather than a designer piece carefully chosen for brand showcasing. Daniel backed her at every turn. When the day of the interview arrived, Mia felt like her chest was a nest of bees. She stood in a private makeup room at the TV studio wearing a simple navy dress that concealed her still-growing bump but remained modest and elegant. A calm makeup artist dabbed at her cheeks while a stylist fussed with her hair. Meanwhile, Daniel paced nearby, fielding last-minute phone calls from Mrs. Blackwell and the show's producer. "We'll keep it short," he assured Mia between calls, noticing her pale face. "Less than 15 minutes, just a friendly chat about how we met, our future plans, and a polite request for privacy. No interrogation." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I can do this." Soon a production assistant led them to the set. A cozy arrangement of chairs and tasteful decor. A warm-toned host welcomed them quietly, promising an easy interview. Camera lights beamed down. Mia's pulse hammered in her ears. "Just be honest," she told herself as the director counted down in hushed numbers. Then, with a silent signal, the host introduced them. "Viewers, we have a special couple joining us today, Daniel Blackwell, well known in the maritime business world, and his partner Mia, who are expecting a child together. Welcome to you both." Daniel greeted the host, then turned to smile at Mia. She forced a calm expression, praying her voice wouldn't shake. The host asked gentle questions about how they met. Mia answered simply. They crossed paths aboard the Paradise Voyager, bonded over kind conversation, and stayed in touch. She left out the whirlwind details, but let warmth color her voice when describing Daniel's kindness. The mention of her background as cleaning staff came up, and she owned it unapologetically, stating she was proud to work hard. Daniel affirmed that her strength and sincerity were what drew him to her. Next, the host gingerly touched on their future plans. Mia spoke earnestly about preparing for motherhood, possibly moving to a safer location. Daniel chimed in about co-parenting with love and respect. He didn't promise marriage, just alluded to taking one step at a time. Throughout, the cameras never felt oppressive thanks to Daniel's steady presence. He held Mia's hand, glanced at her often, and each time reassured her with a gentle look. Finally, the host wrapped up with a question about media scrutiny. Daniel answered firmly, "We appreciate the public's interest, but we ask for understanding. Mia and I are real people, not a headline. We hope everyone respects our privacy as we step into parenthood." The lights dimmed. Applause rang out from a small studio audience. Mia realized her hands were shaking. Once the cameras stopped rolling, Daniel squeezed her shoulders and whispered, "You were brilliant." She let out a shaky laugh. "I was terrified." The host leaned in to congratulate them, promising to send them a copy of the final cut. Mia and Daniel left the set, hearts pounding but feeling oddly triumphant. As soon as they returned to the private dressing area, Daniel wrapped his arms around her in a grateful hug. "You did great," he repeated softly, brushing his lips to her hair. "I'm sure this interview will calm the tabloids, or at least show them they can't make you out to be a villain." A wave of relief and exhaustion washed over her. She realized she had tears in her eyes. Is it hormones, or just nerves? Either way, she let Daniel hold her close, letting the moment's success wash away the tension that had weighed her down all week. Yet even as she savored that closeness, a tiny seed of anxiety nestled in her heart. We're strong now, but what about the next hurdle? The baby's arrival was still months away, and Daniel's world, filled with corporate politics and powerful people, could shift in unpredictable ways. Still, for the moment, they had done something together, openly and honestly. Mia wiped her tears and managed a genuine smile. "Thank you for standing by me," she whispered. "I'm starting to believe we really can handle anything." His dark eyes glinted with tender conviction. "We can, one challenge at a time." A light autumn breeze drifted through the courtyard of the private hospital, carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves. Mia, her belly now quite pronounced, leaned carefully on Daniel's arm as they walked down a path lined with manicured hedges. Weeks had passed since their televised interview, and the public furor around their relationship had largely ebbed. Sure, cameras still occasionally lurked at a distance, but thanks to the tactful approach in that short broadcast, both Mia and Daniel had been granted more peace than they'd dared hope for. The family drama, however, had not vanished so easily. Daniel's schedule was busier than ever. He shuttled between board meetings, corporate events, and hush-hush negotiations, some regarding expansions of the cruise line, others involving shareholders wary about instability since he'd made his personal life public. Mia recognized how stressful it was, yet he always found time to hold her hand at every doctor appointment or stop by in the evenings with groceries from the organic market. She moved into a comfortable apartment on the outskirts of the city, a place with a doorman and good security, as the family had suggested. And though it pained her to leave her parents' home, they now visited frequently, enthralled by the new domain that felt both safe and welcoming. Mrs. Blackwell had not exactly softened into a doting would-be grandmother, but her posture toward Mia had shifted. She invited Mia to occasional lunch consultations, offering tips on baby care and sharing a refined version of motherly advice. It was cool, measured, and at times prickly, but Mia sensed a subtle undercurrent of genuine concern, She also suspected that Mrs. Blackwell's interest was guided by the board's insistence that the Blackwell family present a united front. Even so, Mia appreciated the gesture. Any measure of acceptance was better than the cold suspicion she'd once feared. Now, with her due date on the horizon, Mia found solace in a series of prenatal classes. She discovered new friends among the circle of expectant mothers, some from modest backgrounds, others from wealthy families, but all equally anxious about sleepless nights and the day they would finally hold their child. Daniel joined a few classes when he could slip away from the office, awkwardly practicing diaper changes on plastic dolls to everyone's amusement. He wasn't perfect, but his eagerness warmed Mia's heart. "Breathe, breathe," a soft voice urged, snapping Mia back to the present. She was in the hospital's birthing suite, the pastel walls decorated with calming patterns that did little to mask her pain. Sweat trickled down her forehead. Her contractions had been intensifying for hours until the doctors finally moved her to the delivery room. Daniel stood at her side, face pale but determined. He murmured encouragement between each wave of pain, his hand clasped firmly around Mia's. Mrs. Blackwell hovered in the corner, silent and tense, while Mia's parents stood in the hallway, too anxious to watch but unwilling to be far. The medical team moved swiftly, each action precise. Mia couldn't focus on anything except the searing contraction that rolled through her. She gasped, tears mixing with sweat. I can't, this is so strong," she panted. The obstetrician gave a firm nod. "You're doing great. One more push, Mia. We're almost there." Daniel's voice cut through the chaos. "Come on, love. You're so close. You've got this." Love. The simple endearment ignited a spark of courage. Mia clenched her teeth and bore down with all her strength. Pain tore through her body, then a sudden sense of release. A piercing newborn cry shattered the tense hush. For a moment, the world froze around that tiny sound. "It's a boy," the doctor announced, carefully lifting the squirming infant. The moment Mia glimpsed the wrinkled little face, everything else faded. Her trembling body, the swirl of hospital lights, the stifling fear she'd carried. In its place, overwhelming relief and love surged through her veins. "Oh my God," Daniel whispered, eyes glistening. The doctor placed the baby on Mia's chest, and Daniel's trembling hand covered his son's back, as if to reassure himself this was real. Mia stared in disbelief at the new life she and Daniel had created, tears rolling unchecked down her cheeks. "You did it," Daniel said, voice cracking. "He's perfect." Mia let out a soft laugh that turned into a sob. Every ounce of pain had been worth that cry, that warmth on her chest. Behind them, she vaguely sensed Mrs. Blackwell stepping closer. Though quiet, the older woman's expression was full of astonishment. She murmured something too soft to catch, perhaps a whispered prayer or a gentle exclamation. Mia wondered if this was the moment Daniel's mother realized the depth of what lay between them. An indisputable bond in the form of a precious new life. Soon, nurses and the obstetrician guided Daniel to cut the cord, clamping it carefully. The baby wailed, outraged by the bright lights and sudden separation from Mia's womb. A nurse gently wiped him down, checked his vitals, and swaddled him in a soft blanket. Moments later, he was returned to Mia's arms, calmer now, blinking in the fluorescent glow. A hush of reverence settled over the room. Mrs. Blackwell quietly slipped out, presumably to call others waiting in the hall. Daniel's gaze remained fixed on Mia and their baby, an expression of wonder lighting his features. In that moment, Mia felt like she was seeing him for the first time, fatherhood radiating in every line of his face. "Hello, little one," she whispered, stroking the baby's tiny cheek. The swirl of exhaustion, pain, and adrenaline made her voice tremble. "We've waited for you. We love you so much already." She glanced at Daniel, whose eyes brimmed with tears. Gently, he bent to place a kiss on her damp forehead, then pressed his lips to the baby's fuzzy head. The newborn scrunched his face, let out a little hiccup, and drifted into a dozy calm. Later, once Mia had been cleaned up and moved to a quieter recovery room, her parents tiptoed inside. Her mother's eyes shone with tears upon seeing the baby, while her father stood awkwardly until Daniel nudged him closer. Soon enough, Mia was passing their sleeping son into proud grandparents' arms. It felt surreal. Barely hours ago, that little life was hidden in her womb. Now, he was the centerpiece of a small circle of love. Mrs. Blackwell eventually returned, accompanied by Daniel's father, a reserved man with silver hair and a dignified bearing. Mia tensed, unsure of his reaction. Daniel had warned her that his father was more business-minded and less expressive than anyone else in the family. But as soon as the older man laid eyes on his tiny grandson, a crack appeared in that polished exterior. He softly congratulated them, stooping to place a gentle, somewhat hesitant hand on the baby's blanketed form. "Welcome to the family," he murmured. The statement was simple but carried the weight of acceptance. Mia felt tears sting again, glancing to see Daniel's reaction. He met her gaze, relief glowing in his eyes. Behind them, Mrs. Blackwell stood with her usual composure, though her expression was uncharacteristically tender. She bent low to whisper something to the baby, a quiet greeting from grandmother to grandchild. Mia's heart clenched. Perhaps they would never be the closest family, but this was a start. A fragile unity formed around the newest member of the Blackwell line. The next 2 days at the hospital were a haze of checkups, late-night feedings, and cautious steps as Mia navigated her postpartum aches. Daniel stayed by her side, learning how to cradle the baby, how to change diapers, how to rock him back to sleep at odd hours. Even his mother visited regularly, bringing carefully selected flowers and a hamper of newborn necessities. Mia found herself stunned by the older woman's gentleness around the infant. She spoke in hushed tones, lightly smoothing the baby's hair. Word spread quickly among the media that Mia had given birth. The hospital PR staff, coordinated by Aegean Maritime Holdings, maintained a protective barrier around the grounds. Thanks to that effort, the new family was spared from aggressive paparazzi. The official statement was brief. Mother and child were healthy, father overjoyed, and no further information would be provided. A few tabloids offered speculation about the baby's name, claiming sources said it would be something flamboyant. Mia rolled her eyes. The name, in fact, was chosen quietly between her and Daniel. Matteo, a simple reflection of the melding of their backgrounds. A new life anchored in love, not spectacle, Mia thought firmly. On the day of discharge, Daniel carefully bundled Matteo into a soft car seat. Mia's parents helped gather her belongings, fussing over each detail. Standing by the hospital entrance, she felt the crisp autumn air brush her cheeks and watched the swirl of golden leaves. She couldn't help remembering how, months ago, her life had been about scrubbing floors, each day dragging forward without promise of change. Now she stood with a newborn in her arms, a father at her side who cared deeply, and a future uncertain but alight with possibility. She glanced back at Daniel, who was adjusting the car seat in the back of his SUV. He caught her eye, smiling in that gentle way that had first captivated her on the cruise ship promenade. Back then, she'd been just a nervous housekeeper stealing a break against the railing, oblivious to the fact that she was speaking to one of the ship's owners. Yet fate, in its whimsical way, had written their story quite differently than either could have guessed. Once Matteo was secure, Daniel guided Mia into the passenger seat. She felt the slight ache in her body from labor, but it was overshadowed by a rush of warmth every time she looked at her son. Mrs. Blackwell and her husband offered parting words, promising to visit soon, leaving the new parents to begin their life independently. Mia's mother planted a gentle kiss on her cheek, and her father, tears shining in his eyes, whispered, "We're proud of you." She felt that simple blessing sear itself into her heart. Then, with the hush of the hospital behind them, Daniel started the engine. The road opened up ahead. Mateo let out a quiet, contented sigh from his car seat. Mia inhaled, leaning back against the seat, letting her hand rest lightly on Daniel's arm. "Home," she said softly. "Wherever that is now." Daniel smiled, understanding what she meant. "Our home," he corrected gently, eyes shining with conviction. "We'll make it ours. And if we want the city or a bigger yard or anywhere else the future leads, we'll figure it out. Together." She closed her eyes, feeling that swirl of gratitude, fear, and excitement all at once. A new chapter had begun, one built from two worlds colliding, yet fused by love and a tiny new heartbeat. She might still face judgments or confront the intricacies of Daniel's wealthy family, but in her arms lay proof that miracles could happen even when you least expected them. This child, born from a chance encounter at sea, stood as a testament to how the most ordinary dreams could spark extraordinary destinies. As the SUV merged into traffic, Mia quietly reached back, resting a hand on Mateo's small form. In that instant, all the press headlines, the corporate demands, the stares of disapproval, and even Mrs. Blackwell's guarded acceptance felt secondary. She had her son. She had Daniel. And together, they were forging a path that belonged solely to them. Cleaning lady turned mother, stranger turned father, two hearts now bound by a bond stronger than any ocean tide. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.